I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting for July 15th, 2014 at 6 p.m.
Call the roll, Mr. Crandall.
Yep, here.
Mr. Mahoney.
Here.
Mr. Genoway.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does anybody have any corrections or changes they would like to be made to the minutes of the July 1st meeting?
I do not. None.
Move to present them as...
John Genoway moves to approve the minutes. Second.
Second, sure.
Mr. Crandall.
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Genoway.
Yes. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening?
I have none.
Okay. Hearing of the public on specific agenda items. Mr. Al Hayes.
I'd like to reserve my comments. I'd like to hear the discussion on the levy, and then maybe have a comment if I may.
Okay. Richard, is it Bitter?
Yes.
Would you like to get up and speak?
Well, I just wanted to speak briefly on the possibility of a fire levy. I am the recipient of the fire department services. On December 17th, the police broke into my car and found me clinically dead. The members of the fire department were called immediately, and it's my understanding that we had 2 engines there as well as the life squad. And my cardiologist has told me that it's very rare that somebody is as far gone as I was and is able to come back without any lasting disabilities. But the thing is, seconds are important, let alone minutes. It's my understanding that the fire department is requesting a levy to be put on the ballot, which will help them not do anything new, but just maintain the same service that they've got. And without that, the response time is going to be reduced if they end up having to lay off firefighters, then their response time is going to reduce, and people like me just aren't going to make it. Also, what the fire department is asking is they're not asking the township for money. They're asking the township to put a levy on the ballot and allow the residents of the township to decide whether or not they get that money. So it's not like the department is coming here to you and saying, we need funds for the fire department out of the township's budget. They're just asking you for the opportunity to put the levy on the ballot and let the people of the township decide whether or not they want to continue the same quality service that they enjoy right now. I think it's an extremely important issue. Whether you support the levy or not, at least I think it would be prudent to put it on the ballot and let the members of the community decide whether or not they want it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Daryl, that puts you up.
Good evening. You have before you the monthly report for the zoning department for the month of May. We had a fairly busy month permit-wise. We had 57 permits at a value of just over $3.5 million, and our year-to-date is at 214 and a little over $21 million. That was driven mostly by the 11 new single-family dwelling permits you see there. And Susan, if you could scroll down to the bottom of that page, please. Thank you. That brings us up to 52 for the year and $13.3 million in estimated value. And that's roughly a 24-25% increase on each of those. I'd also like to remind you, being that we're at the halfway mark for the year, all of last year we had 81 single-family dwelling permits, and we're now at 52 just in the first 6 months of this year. So, knock on wood, it's looking pretty good. On the next page, we have the zoning complaints. Again, pretty busy month. We had 37. A good chunk of those were the high grass complaints, and then we were at 88 for the year, which is about where we were last year at this time. For the monthly meetings, the Board of Zoning Appeals had 2 items. One item was continued to the July meeting, and then the other item was a residential variance that was denied. The Zoning Commission did not meet. There was no items for the agenda. And project plan review, we had 1 item, artisan cosmetic surgery at 7634 and 7638 Central Avenue. And that is where the Fenwick Art Gallery used to be. And this is a new cosmetic surgery facility coming in that will double the size of that existing building. That's all I have for the monthly report. I have 2 resolutions. The first one is 14079 to appoint a member to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Each of you should have received the 4 applications that we have.
Would the board like to discuss nominations or recommendations for that board?
I think we got a memo from Darrell suggesting, is it Sheik?
Seek.
Seek?
Amanda Seek.
Amanda, who's apparently an alternate right now to fill this position. So I would make a motion to do that.
I'd like to see Don Miller. Amanda's done a good job. I've did some homework in what she's done. Don's a community guy. He gets it. Economic development. He's a business owner in the township, and so my thought would be to keep Amanda where she's at as the alternate, to continue for her to read, to learn what's going on, and then have Don as the person for that spot. But I don't know.
I kind of thought maybe Amanda's been there a while. We move her up and have Don take her place. I explained your recommendation. I was just reading what I thought you recommended.
Right, I recommended her because she's been the alternate for the past year and a half, and she's shown up not only when she's needed as the alternate member, but even when she isn't needed, just to sit in and observe and learn. Did the board maybe want to hold off on this and in the meantime interview the applicants or phone interview?
My personal feeling, if you two feel the other way, I'll withdraw. And more, I'd rather than drag this out. I just felt that was
No, and you're right. That's a good
Darrell's
point.
recommendation.
No, it's a good
In
point.
my comments or conversation with Don back in January, I thought his interest was to be on the board and not as an alternate, because we were considering him as the alternate, I thought, and he said it. So I didn't promise anything or anything, but I am in favor of Don as well, to be honest. I know he's looking at opening another shop. He's got one in downtown Toledo. He's opening another shop in downtown Sylvania. He's working Bill Sanford, and he is just a very active member of the community. But I don't know Amanda. I know our board's doing a good job.
So let's go with John. What I mean, Want to vote on it?
If you two would like to do that, I'll withdraw my motion.
I'll make a motion that I'd like to keep her as an alternate, though.
Okay.
Amanda, could we ask her if she still would be a part of being an alternate with us?
Well,
She's on now, but what's her term?
it's a one-year term, so
Okay.
it ends at the end of December of this year.
Okay, so maybe with the intention that we'd love to have her still on board, but I'd make a recommendation that we appoint Don Miller, Resolution 14-079, the zoning appeals member.
Second.
I'll call the roll. Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genoway?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
My second resolution is 14078, authorization of abatement of vegetation and/or debris. I have the two properties you see before you, and then, if the board would permit, I'd like to add another property, 6039 Mead Road. It's a vacant property, overgrown weeds. Mead, M-E-A-D-E.
Offer resolution 14-078, authorized property abatements as listed.
Discussion, is that CarMax, as in the CarMax?
Correct.
We're going to mow their yard? What are we going to do there? Pick up some...
Well, we've got complaints about the high weeds and
Okay.
assorted debris on the property.
Okay. Second.
Okay, calling the roll. Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genoway?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Darrell.
Good evening. I have 4 resolutions for the board to consider. I recommend all resolutions to be passed. First resolution is 14-080, award and enter into contract for the Hasty Road drainage improvement. This will be for Gleason Brothers. They were also the bid winner last year for Plainview-Wilford storm drainage, and this project is funded through the Stormwater Utility District.
They did a good job with the drainage last year.
They have satisfactorily completed the project along with a punch list. So communicating between the county engineer's office and our office, I recommend they are the low bidders.
I'll offer resolution 14-080, award and enter into contract for Hasty Road drainage improvements.
Second?
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genoway?
Yes.
Greg, is that 3 or 4 quotes?
A total of 3 culverts on Hasty Road. It will require periodic road closure, daytime hours only. Next resolution, 14-074, award and enter into contract the 2014 OPWC road improvement project. This is for Gherkin paving at just over $509,000. And probably the most expensive item on this project is the south half of Gradwall Road will be a total rebuild. But we're lucky to take advantage of these grant monies and such. So.
I'll offer resolution 14-074, award and enter into contract Gherkin paving.
Second?
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genoway?
Yes.
Next item, resolution 14-075, award and into contract 2014 resurfacing project. This project will focus on the Fairways, Sylvan Green, Miacondas areas. Miaconda Woods subdivision in particular, probably got about 35 years out of that pavement. Extremely well, longevity. This project is 100% locally funded, and a new ball player on our field here, Henry Bergman, out of Genoa, is starting to get some business in Lucas County now.
I'll offer resolution 14075, award of contract for 2014 resurfacing.
Second.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Yes.
Last item is Resolution 14-076, award and enter into contract, household pickup, again with Stevens Disposal and Recycling. This annually occurs the Monday after Labor Day and posted on our website.
I'll offer Resolution 14-076, award and enter into contract for Stevens household pickup.
Second?
Mr. Randall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genoway?
Yes.
Pending your questions, that's all I have for the board.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Rick.
Chief?
We're getting out of order here. Usually I follow the fire department. I know it's April.
I'd like to mix
'Cause I'm-
things up.
Yeah, there you go. Good evening. You have before you the police department's monthly report for June. I won't spend hardly any time on these stats because I want to do something at the end here real quick. But you can see on page 2 the number of CAD incidents, the number of fire incidents. Page 3, our stats. We're basically down in calls for service, which is a good thing, by about 550. We're up slightly on our citations. That's adding in the ton of citations we've written lately for Whispering Oak and some areas where we've had some complaints and some issues. You can see our property damage accidents are up slightly, and our injury accidents are up a bit. We're down in burglaries by quite a bit, up in robberies, and the other things are things that really there's no control in them anyway, and they skew pretty even with last year and year to date. Page 4, you can see we're doing really well, a lot better than I anticipated on our prisoner transport cost analysis. Page 5, which it looks like we jumped to, is just the cases. Again, I won't go over all those numbers. You've got the report before you. Page 6 is just the activities of the DEA task force. It continues to work cases. Nothing of great note in the township last month. Page 7, you'll see the map there. I've included these, and yours is color, which is good because it depicts, well, let's see, that's the traffic, and then the one before is the crime one. Is there? Yeah, why don't we go to that? Okay, crime-wise, you can see that it just kind of gives you a geographic perspective of the township. Everything pretty much is along Central Avenue. You can see we get some activity in St. James, some activity in those neighborhoods south of like Walmart, between Holland, Sylvania, and Reynolds. Walmart could be a district in its own. Myers, it keeps us busy. And a new player, unfortunately, Gabe's up on Monroe Street, seems to attract, how do I say this, diplomatically or whatever. Let's just say it's one of our hot spots too. Okay. Then the next page, page 8, our traffic crashes. Again, you'll see that predominantly on Central Avenue, but you also see East and West Sylvania Avenue has quite a few of them. I'm happy to note with two of the trustees living kind of in the north part of the township that that's very quiet. You might as well be living in Montana or something because it's kind of nice up that way. So, page 9, nothing of note there. Page 10, Safety Township. We conducted that at Central Trail Elementary, June 16th to the 20th. Our enrollment was down a little bit. We had about 100 kids participate this year. Page 11, I just wanted you to see that the speed trailer, we currently have one speed trailer. We are anticipating getting another one, and actually using that as a message board too. I can explain that at a later time, but we get a lot of complaints from citizens, and losing my voice here, and we try to get that out there as much as possible, and it records the data for us so that we've got documentation on what's going on those roads, both volume of traffic and speeders and such. on page 12, you'll see the Department K-9 unit report and his activities. And then the last thing that I want to do here that you do not have is, I feel like it's my job as police chief to promote the department when things are going well and to address issues or make corrections when things aren't going so well. I've got 3 performance reports that were written up just in the end of June for exceptional performance. Basically, I can read these real quick to you faster than I can tell you the story. And it'll give you some idea of how I believe our officers go a little bit above and beyond instead of just responding to calls. On Monday, June 30th, 2014, information had been disseminated before and during roll call regarding 3 suspects who had recently committed acts of vandalism at Wildwood Metro Park, causing significant damage. Photographs of these 3 suspects were also displayed. A short time later, while on routine road patrol, Officer Mull noticed a subject on foot in the area of Holland, Sylvania, and Blossman, near the bike trail, who strongly resembled one of the suspects and was wearing similar clothing. Officer Mull approached the individual and obtained his identity. He further took photographs of the person with his consent. Officer Mull met with Metro Park's investigator, who stated that he believed that this man was one of 3 suspects who had been committing the vandalism. Officer Mull and the investigator went to the suspect's house, but were told that the man had gone to another family member's house several blocks away. The officers were able to locate the house, and by making contact with the resident, not only was the original suspect found inside, but also a second suspect who was believed to be involved. After the suspects had been interviewed, they both admitted responsibility for the vandalism. They further provided the identity of the 3rd suspect who was also involved. Metro Parks officers continued the investigation and charges will be filed. That's just good police work. I mean, it might only be vandalism and such, but that's the kind of stuff that we do out here that keeps, quite frankly, keeps a lot of the crime out of here, because we make a lot of arrests and apprehensions and such. I'll only read the second one real quick here. On June 29th, 2349 hours, Officer Borselman was dispatched to the police station to take a walk-in hit-and-run crash report. The crash actually occurred at a Lexus in Flanders in the jurisdiction of the Toledo Police Department on an adjoining roadway. The victim reported the crash just after it happened at 21:28 hours, that's 9:28 p.m., and was able to locate the suspect driver at his residence, also in Toledo, and an address. A short time later, he waited there for almost an hour for TPD to respond before leaving. The victim went to make a report with TPD, but was told that the crash occurred in our jurisdiction, so he left their station and came to ours. Officer Borsman was able to determine that the crash did indeed occur in Toledo. In speaking with the victim, he learned that his grandfather had just passed away and his funeral was that day. The victim was extremely upset by this, as well as the stressful and frustrating events surrounding the accident he had been involved in. Rather than sending the victim, who is a township resident, away, Officer Borsman took the crash report. He had to locate information through the CAD incidents, as the victim had initially reported everything through Toledo and he had written nothing down. Officer Borsman also followed up at the suspect residence and was able to make contact and interview the driver. Citations were served and the hit-and-run crash was solved, making it possible for the victim to have closure and for the suspect to be held accountable for his actions. Again, we pride ourselves on service out here, and I'm really proud of these guys for the job they do. And that's what makes us, I'm going to brag, a little bit better than a lot of other departments. That's all I've got. If you have any questions.
I do have one question. I got a call at my home, I think Sunday night, and it was a resident that had a block number and didn't identify herself, but she had a lot of complaints on the hours of the shooting range. Are there set hours that we can train out there, or she was complaining that they were out there at 7:30 in the morning on Saturday and Sunday, and she went on for quite some time. But I was just thought that I would follow up and see if we do have set hours, or what are the
We don't have set, well, we do have set hours in the sense that we don't allow anybody out there after dark. Maybe once a month when you have to have a night shoot because you do have to practice that, but we do watch that very closely. And that's late evenings and such. In the summertime, normally we're not out there past 6 or 7 o'clock unless it's a Citizens Police Academy or something like that. I'll have to check on that because, quite honestly, there's a lot. We're very fortunate. We're very blessed in that we've got an outdoor range. Most departments don't. So guess what? Every other local agency wants to use our range, and we allow that, but we do try to regulate the hours. But, it means there's a lot more shooting out there on days that, as opposed to if we were just using it. I'll check on that. I know departments do tend to start pretty early. Weekends really surprises me. Did she give you any specific dates?
This past weekend,
Okay.
She was very frustrated, and that's why she called me, but
Okay.
she implied that it had been going on for quite some time. I don't know, but it was definitely last weekend. It was one of the times.
Well, we're doing these other departments a favor,
Yeah.
okay? A big
Yeah.
favor. So we certainly can regulate when they're out there.
Yes.
And we have, but maybe something, on the weekends in the morning, I'll look into it.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Good work. Thanks.
Fire Department, monthly report.
You have before you the June monthly report. First and second pages are our total runs and our total responses for the month of June. We're seeing a slight increase in both fire and EMS responses that we've had in the past. Page 4 is our mutual aid incident pages. I know you're real interested in that. During the month of June, we received 8 mutual aid requests from Springfield Township. 4 were for assistance, either at a fire or a medical incident, and 4 were assistance with transporting patients to the hospital because there are no ambulances available. We also received 4 mutual aid responses from Toledo. We requested them from Toledo to help fill in during fires and whatnot. As far as given mutual aid response, I know you're interested in that also. We gave Springfield 3 responses. We helped them out 3 times. And we also went into Toledo and helped them out 4. So if you're looking at total numbers, we received 12 mutual aid incidents requests. We received 12 outside agencies, and we only gave out 4 of ours to other agencies. We still stay ahead of the game as far as that goes. Community risk reduction on the next page. Public safety education. Crews visited. We're continuing after the return to the scene with the smoke detectors. We had a few other homes that we still had to catch up from the winter months. We got into 148 homes, installed 10 smoke detectors, and replaced 3 batteries and made those smoke detectors working detectors. We also participated in Safety Town. We were there on Monday to talk about fire with the kids. We also returned on Wednesday to meet with the children and talk about EMS. We were asked by both police departments to increase our attendance there due to the fact that Lucas County did not bow out of it this last year. So we were there for the EMS instructions to the children. We were at Safety City also for a week, so we had 2 weeks of Safety City and Safety Town. Again, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and then we attended the graduations. Notable projects, the Fire Prevention Bureau, again, was very busy. Mike had 16 plan reviews, 9 license inspections, 2 environmental reviews. He did 6 final acceptance of sprinkler systems or alarm system within our community. We conducted 4 public education events at the fire stations, and the fire crews from the stations participated. They went out and inspected 386 commercial buildings during that month. Month 6. As you know, that June was our last month for training. We have July and August off with Lucas County EMS. We have 58 paramedics attend the June training. We also trained at our training site on King Road. The first half of the month, we concentrated on hose pull, sprinkler system operations, and search and rescue at our tower. The second month, we basically reviewed our heavy rescue stabilization equipment and the jaws of life. The following page is a thank you letter from the City of Sylvania thanking us for participating in Safety City. Again, we increased it by 1 day this year because they asked us, we do such a good job with the fire side, they asked us to do the EMS side too, so we did do that. The next page is a STEMI follow-up. These are follow-ups that we get from Toledo Hospital. Remember, or just to remind you and refresh your memory, that STEMI means ST elevation. If you have an elevation of your ST segment on your cardio 12-lead EKG, it means you're having a myocardial infarction. So that's what STEMI stands for. Our patient contact, this was Life Squad 10 that we went ahead and, Life Squad 5 that we went ahead and responded with our engine company. The engine company got there, did the 12-lead EKG, identified that it was indeed a STEMI patient. The patient was taken to Toledo Hospital, taken to the cath lab. It was a little difficult in the cath lab, as you can read. He had 5-vessel disease. The person made it and was discharged home with no issues. The on-scene time and transport time, from the time we made patient contact to the time they arrived at Toledo Hospital, was 23 minutes. The patient spent 37 minutes at Toledo Hospital in the cath lab. So that's phenomenal times again of turning around, identifying that it is a heart attack happening, getting that patient to Toledo Hospital, to the cath lab, and getting them that definitive care. The last page, page 7, it's sort of hard to read, but it is a letter from a individual, a woman that ran on her husband and helped her husband out. That was Lieutenant Nye, Lieutenant Kapersky, or Craig Kapersky, I'm promoting him already, and Stefan Tia. So that concludes our June report, unless you have anything else for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
Next up on the agenda is under the Administrator, and it's a Resolution 14077 to proceed with the submission of the question of a tax levy in the amount of 1.5 mils. As a little bit of background, last meeting we passed a resolution to have the auditor certify the dollar amount of a 1.5 mil levy. I have the certification from the Lucas County Auditor. It's down to the dollar of what we expected, $1,820,140. So we do have that certificate. So now that we have the certificate, this resolution then would go down to the Board of Elections with the certificate to be placed on the ballot in November.
I would like to open up a discussion on this before we proceed. I find myself in a very difficult position. And one, because as Mr. Ritter stood up and told a great story of our fire department, I think everyone in this community has benefited from our fire department. As an elected official, I'm here to monitor with the expenses of that department. And that's where things get much more difficult than the service that's provided. I think the leadership of the department, since I've been here, has never been better. I feel very confident in the chief and his 2 deputy chiefs. But there are some things that I wish would have been discussed prior to this point. And some of the things that really bother me the most is that at our June 17th meeting, we were talking about looking at hiring the first additional staff member, even looking at that in 2016. And sometime between that point and our July 1st meeting, we changed that to hiring 2 people next year. And we never discussed or looked at response times, as Mr. Ritter pointed out, are key to what our fire department brings to it. I mean, seconds and minutes do matter. And for someone who's choking, some heart patients, these things matter. But we've never looked at it. But still, we're going to plan to go ahead and hire 2 people next year. And if I do simple math again, it costs us about $110,000 per fireman out there. And
when we've got a 24.5% pension pickup, it costs us $20,000 per firefighter for health insurance coverage. I mean, what I'm challenging and looking towards the department is, how can we supplement what we're doing with part-time people that's not going to impact us as financially as hiring 2 full-time people next year. And, one thing I would like to point out in this report, even the latest report, shows us going from 6 part-time employees to 3 this past year. Well, we've gone from 12 to 3 in the past 4 years. And I got those numbers from Jim Beck. And, we've got $150,000 set aside for part-time staff, but we've never gone over $52,000. And we are right on track for that number again, even though this year we've raised that to $100,000. So, I take it very serious when you go out and ask the community for another $1.8 million, and there's no doubt the fire department needs money. The problem is that, kind of like Congress, we've piggybacked so much stuff onto this thing that I'm not comfortable with getting this message out to the community. And that transport issue, I understand there's a need here, but I've always said I am not willing to go forward with that need until the stipulation from the union that we have to hire 2 people if we do that. And, I think, we've met with Mobile Care, we met with ProMedica. We all agree that there is a gap here in service, but what is the best way? They're telling us we can narrow it down to a few hours a day. And do we need that additional staff? And that's where my support for this falls off. And in terms of getting community input, which I think is very valid and needed when you, again, go ask, we're going to raise the department's revenue by over 20%, I believe, at $1.8 million. So I'm just not comfortable doing that until we have some of these figures and ideas out there. I mean, we've got no feedback in terms of whether we're going to get back in transport. We've got no feedback in terms of, again, one thing that I keep hearing about are issues with commercial building inspections. Are there better ways that we can use the current resources that wouldn't impact the bottom line to the tune of $220,000 and keep escalating from there? So I would like to, first off, I would like to ask those the people that put this report together, how the mistakes were made in saying that we went from 6 part-time employees to 3. And why do we have $100,000 budgeted for part-time employees when we've never used more than $52,000? And even to date, we're still on track for that number. And why is it $100,000? And, and I printed something off the website on 7/7 that had the May 21st date on it. We've had 15 different versions of this report, 8 of them since June. So I understand it's a living document and stuff, but every time I spend, a large portion of time to dig into this, the thing's changed already. And how can we expect our community to understand and to wrap their arms around it when I don't understand it? And I'll take full responsibility for not getting involved. And, at the April meeting when Al Hayes stood up and said, how about the levy? And Mr. Crandall, you responded that we're not even sure we're going to have a levy. I demanded the next day, I wanted to see what progress had been made on this report and where it was at. And it was fairly far along, but it lacked so many of the details and information. Again, I was fairly on board with the program until we switched to we've got to hire 2 people next year. I just don't see where that was ever even discussed. I don't see where, sure, we've got call volume is increasing. There's no doubt about that. But our response times continue to be good. And, I'm kind of at a loss here. And if somebody can convince me and show me this need, I'm willing to go for it. I support our fire department. I do. It's just that I'm also in charge of the financial part of it. And I mean, as I go out in the community, every single person in this community complains about property taxes. And you've got to, you know, this is just heaping on that pile.
I'll try to respond, John. I may not have made all the notes. Certainly, not only have you questioned numbers, it's a responsibility from all of us to question numbers. I don't know that we've ever done this before. At least I've never been a trustee. I've worked on levies, but I've never been in this position. I don't think, and it is a living document.
I understand
It
that.
started in May, and boy, there's been a lot of changes, and I can't tell you, that's up to Mr. Zeitler, but as we got the changes, we kept making suggestions. There was a change at the end on the number of firemen. The initial report said 3.
Through a 7-year period.
Yes, oh yeah.
Yes.
There's no question on your numbers. But then, as we looked at the increased calls, and then I think you added responses, which is great. I mean, we're trying to reach a consensus here. So you look at calls, you look at responses, and if you look at our peak year, 03, now you can look at...
Peak year for what?
I think peak year of employment.
Why are we looking at that? I mean,
Well-
if I'm able to get the same job done with 5 people, it doesn't matter if I had 10 yesterday
Well,
or
that's fine.
anything, but I'm getting the
Well,
job done at 5.
But you can pick, all I'm saying is we went back to 03
Mm-hmm.
to 13, that's a 10-year period. You could pick 5 years out of that. I think the chief has said the calls increased 5.6% a year. But if you go back 10 years, it's not 5.6%. So you have all the numbers. You may not have all the numbers, but you can look at numbers a lot of different ways. But what happens is when you look at the calls or responses, either one, they're up like 40 to 50%, and we've cut the employment back 8%. And when I say we, none of us were on the board for the last levy. But there should be a continuity with the township regardless of leadership. So
How did that get interjected so late in the game? I mean, those numbers were there a year ago, they were there 6 months ago, and June 17th, we weren't looking to hire anybody until
That's
16.
correct. The first
So
one.
how did that change? And I'm concerned is that now that we're getting in the transport game, we're being mandated for our staffing levels by a union instead of this board here.
Yeah, I want to try to take each item if I can, but let's go to transport. I did not realize, maybe you guys knew it, but we do, of all the transport calls, and we don't transport in every call. There's about 1,000 calls, no transport is needed. But of the transport calls, we do 26.5% ourselves. That's because we transport for an emergency. If it's, and we all know this, I mean, you just sometimes don't put the numbers together. So we transport a lot. We do 26%. But that's for advanced life support. For basic life support, we don't transport at all. We use the private sector. And that intent's never changed. The numbers may have changed, but I don't think 20 minutes or longer is acceptable to this community. And when we use Springfield to come because we're not allowed to transport, I don't think that's acceptable either.
Well, we've never said that they're not allowed to transport. I believe that
Well, I
has
know.
been a union.
I'm new. You didn't
Okay.
transport any, 0 BLS last year.
Right.
Why? I don't know. But my point is, we're not looking at transporting in the terminology of Toledo or the other departments we compare ourselves to, which are our size, are not here locally. You've seen that comparison. I think if you look at that comparison for size of community, we compare pretty well on what our department is doing. Now, you start out on numbers, and like you said, it's a living document. People are giving you input from the community. We're getting input from the administration, and certainly you notice the numbers change. And maybe we didn't, I'll take that blame, maybe we didn't call that to your attention. But as we looked at the calls, we said we should add 2 firefighters.
What did you base that in, what did you base that
Based on
decision
the
on?
number of calls, and if you remember, you got a memo from me, and the chief recommended 5.5 people, from 3.5 to 5.5 people. The chief, myself, and Mr. Zeitler took a look at it, and our consensus opinion was 4 people, not 5.5. So, and then we said,
When date was that? Because I've only seen 3.
no, it would be my memo back in June.
June
You've
27th?
seen it. Yeah, let me look. You need the
Again,
exact
I
date.
think I printed out everything
I'll give you the
possible.
exact date.
While he's looking that up, I just,
6/16 was the memo to it.
while he's looking that up, just one thing to interrupt. You asked about the transport. The previous board of trustees eliminated the transport and told them they were not able to transport anymore. So that's why we are out of the business.
I thought it was because the union said if we got into it, we had to hire 2 people.
No, this is before.
That wasn't part of it.
No, the previous board actually eliminated the transport, so do not transport.
But now, you are right, the union contract, and you know more, you've been here longer than I have, John, I'm the new guy. But then I realized the union contract says you add 2 people if you transport. I don't understand that, because there's no connection. The chief has recommended 1 man per shift, so it's not due to transport. We can transport at any time, but we do need some equipment for our existing unit, and you know that number. That's 30,000. Now, as you begin to look at this and break it down, we said, wait a minute, we could transport right now, but if we're adding, because of the calls, if we're adding 2-time firefighters, and then eventually we need to replace the medic unit that we have, it's got 73,000 miles on it. Is that going to go 7 years? Can't. So when you tie that together, I don't know about the others, but I felt uncomfortable. If we have the levy, we know we can do it, and we can do it for a period of time. I don't want to do it for a year and then shut it down, hire 2 guys and then lay them off. That doesn't...
No, that's the worst thing any employer can do.
And John, your questions have been very helpful. I mean, really, and Neil. I mean, but it's not like we can sit down as 3 trustees. And
I know,
come up with
that
it. I
makes it
volun-
difficult.
Yeah, but John, I volunteered. I'll work with the chief. And I'll tell you, it's a lot more work than I thought I signed up for.
I know,
And
I know you
work
guys
with
have put in
Mr. Seidler. That's okay. I mean, but I felt my job is to give you guys the data, and your job is to question it. So the questions do not bother me at all.
Well, here, we've compared 6 different fire departments to us, and I know what the firemen make and all that, but I don't know how many calls they're responding to with how many firemen, and yet somehow we've come up with, we've got to hire 2 people because our call volume has increased.
Well, you
So-
know what our call volume is increased at all.
Well, I do know that, but
Yeah.
I'm still, when I look at it on an annual basis, 3.5, 4.5 calls per station, per shift is not, to me, running at peak, getting out of a meeting with ProMedica today, he's saying from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., those guys are nonstop. Like, they don't park that truck in a garage anywhere. And so how do we get the most out of our department? And I keep going back to number 1, if we got our firemen out of commercial building inspection and had 1 dedicated fireman, that would free up a lot of resources that we could put towards increased call volume and even transport. But we're not even considering that.
Oh, yes, we are.
It's in that last...
Yeah, but, well, let me try it this way. We said, let's add a fireman in 16 and 17. Then as we kept working on it, looking at the calls, we said it'd be best to add them in 15 because then we can add the patient transport. And when I say that, we're only supplementing the private sector guys. They do 85% of the calls, and I think they do a pretty good job. But it's at 15, I don't think anyone in this community should wait for Springfield to come over because the private sector didn't respond. And by the way, that's only less than 6% of the calls. And then the second thing is the 20-minute wait really bothers me, longer. That's only 15% of the calls. That's what we're targeting. and we're really supplementing the private sector. So I think that's a smart move. As we add firemen, does it add to the calls? No, it doesn't. Does it add to the service? Greatly to the service.
And I think one thing we can all three.
One last
sorry.
thing. No,
Sorry.
one last thing. If we add 2 guys, the chief, and I know Mr. Zeitler have already talked about, that guy we're adding could take a car and go out and
See,
do
but that's where
inspection.
that word could.
One single.
That word could bothers me.
Well,
You know,
John,
we
all-
will is one thing, we could is another.
well, here's why. I hope we're all 3 here 7 years from now, but I find that doubtful. So, all we're saying to the community is we need a levy, and this is what we're going to do with the money. Now, are we committing to 2 firemen in 15? No. That's got to come back to this board. And if the levy doesn't pass, you think we're going to do that, John? We're not. I mean, I think all this is saying is, here's a report, take a look at it, this is what we could do if we had the money. If we don't get the money, I can tell you right now, John, we're not adding 2 firemen. The report says we'll be laying 3 off, and we'll be back for another levy in 15. That's what the report says. Now, there was a living document, and I think I'm as close, well, no, I think the chief and John are closer. But hell, I come in, excuse my language, every day and say, geez, what changed today? So I'm as frustrated as you are, but I don't see anything wrong with the process. And we've also had it out to Sylvania CIC, the Chamber of Commerce, Sylvania Community Services.
What version did they get?
They got the first version. Now, some of us went to meetings. I attended 2 or 3, and if there was an update, I gave them. Dave, I think you attended Sylvania Area Family Services. I don't think you guys attended, but that's okay. I'm
Well,
just saying.
I'll tell you, I had
But-
the Chamber of Commerce and people from Rotary and several other people ask me what this document was, and I brought that up in past meetings. Like, it was very kind of a detail of what we've got in the department, but then right at the very end, everything changed to, this is what we're going to do. We're going to hire 2 people, we're going to get into transport, and all that stuff where we're going to consider it, we're going to look at it. And that's where, to me, it changed from, hey, we're running $900,000 in the red every year. We had 2 firemen.
Wait a minute, what do you mean every year? We're in the black right now.
Well, that's because we're pulling out of a bank account that's had $8 million and it's down to
Oh, you're
very
looking at
minimal.
income expenses not
Yes.
carried over? I'm not sure.
I mean, Mr. Zeitler, is that accurate number?
Right, when you have a levy on, you build up in the first few years of the levy, and then draw on it the last few, just like this plan here where we said 7 years.
Well, let me ask you this. If we're 900 in the red now a year, we had 2 firemen at 2.25. We give raises, which I know the firemen are expecting. I mean, how much are we adding to that bottom line? I mean, that's where hiring those 2 people in that first year really changes the financial focus of this whole document.
Well,
And we don't, and I think, and if I could maybe interject on something.
Go ahead.
Or go ahead, John.
Well, I have those numbers, it was in the spreadsheet I passed out.
you've got this, don't you?
Yes.
The
That
spreadsheet.
shows-
And I've got plenty of questions there. Why and how did we add $400,000 to this year's personnel expenses when nobody in the fire department got raises and our health insurance costs were flat?
400. I'm not seeing, I see a couple of hundred.
350 or something? I mean, where is it at?
Personnel, I see 6,183,000. I'll round it to 6,430,000.
Okay, so 250, 300,000?
That's not my exhibit. I'll let you.
It's a 3, I don't have the.
Oh, you want it? Here you go.
No, I'll have to take my shoes off.
He's questioning the personnel.
Yeah, I had that,
Well, one thing, oh no, I wanted, yeah.
If I could say something.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've, in each of our departments, we have, every year we get together and we talk about what the actual budget's going to be. Okay? And then at the end of the month, we look at our numbers and we say, boy, we're doing a great job because our revenues are beating our budget. Okay? We're taking 1.5 here at, it's a work in progress budget. I mean, personally, would I like to see the private transport handle all the calls? and they can do it within the time frame we need, absolutely. We just saved $30,000. I mean, I think we can look at this as a work in progress. We're going to have, you and I are still going to be grinding the numbers out. When the chief needs a new vehicle, we got to have some control over this stuff, like we have. That's kind of where I'm coming from with this. Is we've got a budget, we got to put a number out there. I'm hoping this levy lasts 7 years, like we just did, guys.
Well, wait,
You know?
let's not forget that this board waived the debt of the fire department. So
Well,
before our hands get sore patting ourselves on the back, there's been some other things that we've done. I understand that.
I don't want to. Let's try to. I'm not patting myself on the back because I think you should be patted on the back to the fact that you let this thing go as the chairman, and me as the vice chairman the last couple of years. We've done a good job with this department, John. We've done a great job.
I know.
And we've cut the numbers down.
But
We've screwed
we're
that.
asking our residents, my neighbors, for $1.8 million more dollars, and I take that real serious.
Well, I do too. And what a wonderful time to have it when we've got a governor election this year. We've got a perfect sampling of people that believe. Do the people believe in the fire department, or do the people not believe in the fire department? We've got a great opportunity to have all forces of voters here to really give us a good analysis of what they think of our department. And you know what? You're right. If they don't want if the levy doesn't pass, guess what? We're not hiring two. Guess what? We're not even thinking about transfer. We may not even think about hiring two if the levy passes, John. This is just a budget
That's
numbers.
in the document, Neil.
But these are the
so
numbers
we're kind
that-
of going back on our word if we don't hire them. I mean, this is what we've said we're going to do with the money.
Yeah, but you and I are only here for 3 more years.
Mm-hmm.
I hope Neil's successful next year. He's got 5 years. Are we all going to be the same in 7 years? No, but we're saying to the community, and it worked out the last time. It was different trustees, but thanks to you guys, you came on and went from 5 years to 7 years.
And you're right.
That's
there was
all
some
we're
money
trying
kicked
to
in.
do.
You're right. I don't know what those numbers were, John, but we still grinded these guys down in every budget, in every department, I don't care if it's the road department, police department. We have done a great job of what their budget is. It's never what their revenue and budget is. And you know what? You're a fiscal conservative, and I know that we can all, we can keep an eye on this thing. We have to. We're not going to let this thing get out of control. But we do need the money. It's a great opportunity to have it in the fall, and we've got the right people. It's a governor election.
We did all agree, I think, although we didn't have a motion on it, the commitment to the community is 7 years. We're going to make that work. It may mean we get one less piece of equipment. It may mean we don't get that third fireman. I think it's up to the chief whether he puts him on line duty or inspection. I don't want to be making that decision. And we said, let's get 2 in the beginning because that really sets us up so we can supplement the private sector.
But we haven't looked at other communities in terms of what their call volume is a day. I mean,
Sure we have. We've looked at the comparable communities. We didn't look at Maumee or Perrysburg because they're completely different departments. Perrysburg's got 1 station and they got 4 guys per station. I think that's probably fine for a first response, but if they didn't have mutual aid, they can't handle a house fire with 4 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Exhibit C, John, is the comparable departments with the call volumes. Are those responses? No, we didn't get that. I think you brought up the responses.
in the past 4 years, Mr. Zeitler, you and I did these numbers. Our department responds with 2 or more vehicles to 13% more calls with 2 or more vehicles than we did 4 years ago. So is that driving our response,
I don't know.
number of responses?
I know that,
Is it going to jump up again when we start transporting, or is that going to drive us to hire more people? These are legitimate questions.
well, no, but, well, let's take if you get a rescue call, let's say you have an accident and Station 4 responds, that's 1 response. If the county unit responds also, that comes out of Station 1. So if I'm right, Chief, that's 2 responses. Let's say you have a multiple alarm on a fire and 3 of our stations respond. That's 3 responses, still 1 call. And I know the ratio in 2013, if you take the calls to the responses, that's 70%. So if you
I think it's higher than that, wasn't it, Mr. Zeitler?
I didn't hear you.
1.7.
1.7.
The ratio. If you take
I think we
the
came
calls,
one, I know we came up with a number, was
Here, I
it
can get you.
1.53? was it?
Chief, do you know the answer at all?
I do, I'll get it. Let me find it here.
1.7 is what?
Responses to calls in 2013.
No, what you're saying is if you have 100 calls, you'd have 170 responses.
We had 8,122 responses, and we had 4,078 calls. So that's 1.7 per call, if you did the ratio. I don't know that it means a lot, but it does show that it's pretty rare when we have one call and open the garage door for one station. It's usually two or more. And that's the chief's job. I don't want to.
No, and that's where I'm not doing it, but you can see where numbers can get driven in a certain way if we start responding with 3 vehicles to everything, and now we're kind of backed into hiring more people if the responses go up.
By the way, that does not include out-of-district calls, because that's the county's unit going, and that's only one response. We don't send our equipment unless they ask for help to out of our district. We have out of our district in 2013, we had 653 calls, and that's all county EMS unit. I found the department pretty good when you ask them a question. It's putting it in a manageable manner, John, which has been my struggle.
Again, there's no doubt our department is tops, and there's no doubt we've got everything in place. My question is, if we're going to be asking for $1.8 million more, what are we going to do with it? And that's where things got really gray with me, and that's where things got changed very rapidly at the very end, and I don't feel comfortable with it. I mean, that's the problem, and that's why we as a board have been saying we wanted this stuff back in March, and so we can have public input. And again, presenting something like this, if I don't understand it, presenting it to a Sylvania Area Family Services, I can't imagine they were able to wrap their arms around what we're looking at. I mean, like I said, it's very difficult to take that personal side out as, oh my God, they saved my uncle, they saved Mr. Ritter here. I mean, that is huge. But now we're talking dollars and cents, and that gets a little bit more difficult. And so when you present it to a board that's had positive experiences with our department, they all say, oh, great. But when you get down to paying for, 24.5% pension pickup, things get a little dicier. And that's where I'm very reluctant to go forward with anything that says we have to hire anybody in next year.
I don't think we're saying that. What if the levy doesn't pass?
What if it does? Is that just like what the previous board had promised, if the levy passed? If it does, are we hiring those 2 people?
That's up to the 3 of us.
Well, but that's what, are you committing to that in this document that you produced?
We remember the process. We said, instead of saying to the chief and to Mr. Zeitler, let's add an inflation factor to our present costs, and I think you used the term drill down into the numbers. And so the chief has made a number of changes in the way he's responding with the engines and trucks in order to keep the mileage down. These are changes we've already made. John, we also said, as a part of this report, we need more part-time people. We're down to 3.
From 12, not 6.
Well, you'd have to show me where...
Here you go.
Well, that's okay.
And again, that's where I get puzzled when we've got $100,000 budgeted and we've spent 21, and we've got $150,000 budgeted for next year.
Well, Ken, you've asked that question. You said, you wrote a memo, why is it $147,000? And Mr. Zeitler answered it.
And it said we're going to continue doing what we're doing. So when somebody answers that response, I expect the number to be equal.
Chief?
I would like to explain the part-time statistics, if you would like me to.
Please.
Sure, go ahead.
When we first took on the part-timers, we had 10 part-timers in our part-time staff. We don't pay these guys a lot of money, but we ask them to do at least one 24-hour shift a week. They do that. They commit to that for us to help supplement our daily staffing levels. What has happened is we had 2 individuals that got full-time jobs at other departments, and we ended up hiring 4 out of the remainder part-timers as full-time employees. We see the part-time position as a very is a win-win for us, because we have these individuals come in, we see what their work ethics are, we see if they can do the job or not, because everybody can't do this job. Everybody sitting here wouldn't be able to be a firefighter, and we understand it, or a police officer, or a politician. We understand that, okay? So by having these guys on a part-time basis, we can evaluate them, they can evaluate us to see if our department fits their needs of their family and whatnot. So we hired off that list. We give a test every 2 years. We have a testing process. Individuals come in. There's a long, drawn-out thing that they have to do. They have to take a written test. They have to take a physical agility test. If they fail the physical agility test, they're out of the lineup. We get rid of them. Then they have to go through a physical, and then they have to go through a psychological profile. Once they get past all those, then I bring it to the trustees and say, I would like to hire X amount of people. We have 7 in the queue right now that will be starting a mini fire school, even though all these individuals that we have on our list have Firefighter 2 training by the State of Ohio certificate. We want to go ahead and take them through the way that we do things to make sure that nothing was missed in their training sessions that they had through the State of Ohio, and assure that these individuals will be good employees for us, and we'll be able to put them on engines to respond with our guys. We're in the process of starting that. The captain's getting that geared up, and in fact, Susan's going to help us in getting them signed up with all the paperwork that they have to do. So as the time goes on, those numbers will be 10 again. But as we have a couple retirements come up, we have a couple people that might go to other jobs. There's a lot of guys that took the Toledo test. And that happens every time they do it. And so we might have to draw from those part-timers again, John. And that's what happens. They go down, and then we go through the cycle again to get those numbers back up. So that's what happened. That's why we're up and we're down and we're up and we're down. That's why that happens.
I noticed too, right now, 9% of your staff is out on FMLA leave.
Yeah,
Is that common? Is that
no,
uncommon?
Sir. No, it's not common. This is an anomaly that happened this year again. It hasn't happened for a long time. These were either on the job injury or off the job injury, where they have extended leave. We had one individual that just came back, but the problem is the younger guys that we've hired are starting families. When you start a family, you have babies. That happened. They go off on FMLA for a while. So there's a constant, and that's why if we have the manpower on the shifts, the numbers on the shifts, I can take care of a sick call without having to hire back on overtime. If I have numbers on a shift, I can put somebody in a car and send them out inspecting. I've done that. But if I'm at my minimum of 14, they go on an engine, that engine goes out and does the inspection. So we're trying to do all the things, and some of the things that you suggested, we're trying to implement. We implemented, I think you all know this now, that we've implemented the cross-staffing of the truck with the engine. The engine always goes out unless the truck is specifically needed for an event, for a run or something. So we've drawn down on that. We've lessened the exposure of the truck to the community. So we try doing all these things and try to come up with the ideas that you guys have given us. It's a challenge. It's a challenge every day to run. I'm sure the people out here have to run their own business and things. It's a challenge with the economy the way it is. But we try our hardest to go and make the response time stay the same, which is difficult sometimes, especially with the road closures we have out west, and to try to get there in time to make that impact on the patient.
While you're there, Chief.
Yes, sir.
If it was anybody else, I wouldn't have the confidence I do that this department is doing everything it is supposed to and things. And I know everyone in the department probably despises me, and because I keep hammering and things. But like I said, so much changed in the last 3 weeks that it really left me without a comfort level of what this department is going to look like and what the expenses to cover those changes are going to be. I know we need money. We've known that for several years. So for me to kind of turn a blind eye to that, that's not the case. What really concerned me was when things started changing here at the end in terms of hiring people, what we were doing. That's why I've asked several times, and it might not be the proper terminology, but a business plan. How do you plan to run your department, Chief? And I've never gotten in and told you to do this or that. And that's where I thought the community input was going to be important, because it's not just a trustee saying, I think this. And sometimes those are good ideas, and sometimes you've got 24 reasons why you can't do that, and you're like, well, I never thought of that. But to get community input, then we can kind of move forward with everybody agreeing, and that again is a big piece of what's lacking in this is You might be able to run this report by somebody and they say, oh, I agree, but there's been no, I know Mr. Hayes in the audience has asked several times to be on that committee and things, and as a former part-time firefighter, I would expect him to have a few good ideas. I know there's a Springfield firefighter in here who's a resident of our community who might be able to share some things, what they do, how different, and I just, again, it's something that I wish we would have had more of, and I got an email last week asking for people who want to be on that committee, and I'm like, what's this committee going to do at this point in time? And unless that committee could...
John, all I'm trying to do is, and you are right, my memo to the departments was the middle of February, what I wanted to say in the report, and I know I honestly covered my bases. But my point is, now we're getting down to crunch time for
I know.
the levy, and if you say, and which I think is a logical question, the community says, what are you going to do if you get the money? That's spelled out pretty well. And one of the biggest things is equipment. Our buildings are in good shape, thanks to the last levy. We got 4 major pieces of equipment the last levy. But you take a look at our support equipment, we all know, even though we've got a budget for it, we're putting off the support vehicles. We got vehicles, 100,000 miles, and we need $8,000 worth of repairs. Our administration and chief aren't going to do that.
I understand.
I mean, we understand. So those vehicles are sitting. We've also cut back from 21 vehicles to 17. But that assumes we can get the replacement vehicles with the levy. So, and that is well spelled out here. And that's a sizable amount of equipment we still need.
And again,
it's not an easy decision. And believe me, I think maybe you said something like fire department doesn't like or something about it. We welcome those questions. But sometimes it takes 3 or 4 days by the time we sit down, figure it out, have everybody review it, and bring it back to you. And I think maybe you're expecting a response. quicker
No.
than we
Well,
can.
when I'm voting on it tonight, I don't expect to get another version of this report in my mailbox when I walk in here today. And I understand something changed since the last one. But it's not fair to me, and it's not fair to the community to ask for something. Again, and I'm going to go back to my main opposition to this is us hiring 2 people, and that being in the document. When it's a department that 81% of the costs are to personnel, we're not going to be helping that by adding staff. And so without ever even, again, we're now truck jumping, but what other things are out there that
Well, one
would
thing
keep us
is,
at a lower
when
staff level?
80%, which is understandable, is personnel. I don't know how you could expect us to honestly come back and say, we're not going to need anybody for the next 7 years.
Well, I don't expect that either.
Okay, so there's somewhere...
Like I said, I was comfortable with looking at it for the first time in 2016. But that changed dramatically between
And that's
the
because
last
of-
June meeting and the first July meeting.
help me out, John. If even though it changed, it doesn't necessarily say we have to do that in 2015. It's the budget.
It even
It's really
tells you-
simple. It's the budget.
In fact, if you notice,
Huh?
one of the...
It's a wish list. We're following a budget, just like I do at my personal house
Yeah,
at
I
home.
know.
I'd love to
I
go on
know.
vacation, but I can't do that because I can't
I don't know that I like
afford
wish
it.
list because that says to me, we didn't take a hard look at the numbers. We looked at 1.25, you got those figures. I don't know how that can last 7 years. Do what you want with it. We looked at 1.5 and then we looked at 1.75. And so we just did, some people said, oh, what's the difference between 1.5 mils and 1.75? Well, I don't think we need it. So I think we took up that. I don't think we're just up there. But I think this is more of a needs list than a wish list. And I'll be glad to go down piece by piece of equipment with anybody.
I know.
We've let the support vehicles go longer than we should, but I don't know that that was bad. That gave you the 7 years versus 5 years. I understand that. And if you look on the report, the last vehicle we're recommended to replace is the aerial platform truck. And that's a big expenditure, and that's going to be a future board. I don't know if they can do that. That's why we've got question marks on it. Because you might not be able to and keep the commitment of 7 years. You know, so I'm comfortable with this, but John, could we have a meeting where you say, let's invite the public in and hear from them? I don't know why not. I mean, but all I'm trying to do is reach a deadline here for getting the millage on the ballot. And maybe that's for us to do, or maybe that's for the campaign committee to do. I don't know. But it seems to me we're coming down to a deadline, and are we going to try this in November of this year? And we have to be able to say, if we get the money, here's what we're going to do. So I hope you'll support me.
Mr. Ritter, I'd take one after you. I do believe it's the people that decide on this levy, and this is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a great opportunity with the races that are in this fall to get a true analysis of what people think of the township and the city and our services in the fire rescue department. So,
Al
Hayes
wanted
questions about the
motioning he
resolution.
would like to after you're done. You know.
Well, I was going to offer resolution, so
Well, he deferred at the beginning. remember, he
okay.
was
I'm
on
sorry.
the- Al?
Well, I agree on a lot of the points. I agree. Oh. Al Hayes, 7040 Whitetail Court. Lived here 67 years. Anything else? Oh, my birthday? All right. What we have to do is we waited to put the levy on. Shame on whoever. We made some mistakes. We didn't go to the public. Okay, let's not beat that up anymore. Let's have some public meetings, but let's go ahead and get a vote where we have a unison vote to put this on. But let's not say we're putting 2 guys on. Let's not say we're going to start the transport unit, because that was never, ever mentioned. The transport unit was never, ever mentioned. Am I correct?
Well, it said we would review it.
Okay, review it. So let's not say that to the public that we're going to do that. If what I'm hearing right now is we need the money. There's no argument about that. Right. We need the money. So you guys administer the money along with the deputies and the chief and let that do. But don't promise somebody something that's going to get us in a icky-wicky. What's it going to hurt? You know, you administrate the money. If you say you're getting $1.5 million or 1.8, and you went over, I heard a number of 900,000 just off the top and not even replacing a lot of stuff, you're going to eat a lot of that up. So let's wait and see and take care of the things we need to take care of instead of piggybacking a whole bunch of stuff on there. I have one other comment. That's all. I don't know what else to say. There's so many questions, but you know, it all beats back down that we need this. I'm not saying we don't need the transport unit, but don't put us in a sticky wicket that we have to have it, because then our costs are going to go up and we're going to be in the same shape 5 years from now or 7 years from now. That's all I'm saying about that. Did I make myself clear enough? Okay. The other thing is I'm a little bit disappointed. I'm the vice chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Our zoning inspector recommended Amanda for that job. She's done a quality job. Amanda, right? Okay. I didn't want to make her. Anyway, she's done a quality job. Why wouldn't you people take somebody that was on that board and worked in the process with us and now bring somebody else in? Did she, would you think that would be a slap in the face? I totally disagree with you 2 guys on that deal. That was a sham. I don't know this guy from Adam. I just know how this board works. The board, in my understanding, the chairman and I thought Amanda was going to, and that's what we recommended, I believe, to you. And that's what you recommended to there. Is that correct? So I don't know where you're coming from on that. I don't know who this guy is, but I'm not happy about that. Okay, I said my piece. Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Best of luck.
Thanks, Sam.
All right. Again, maybe I'll preface this. I think with our group up here and the way we manage the departments and the way that we manage the money, I think we can get this. I think we can get this handled. But I'd like to offer Resolution 14-07. Where am I at here? I'm sorry. 14-077. Proceed with submission of a tax levy in the amount of 1.5 mils.
Second?
Call the roll. Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
No.
Okay, next.
You got the minutes
Oh, for the minutes for the meeting? Yeah.
for the report?
Report, Mr. Simcoe, since we addressed these reports in the meeting, instead of reading the whole thing, I like to submit these as part of the minutes of the meeting, because we discussed them in the...
For the public, this is
Yeah.
the original report, updated to last Friday, and then it's my memo, the chief, and John on the questions for transport. What would that take? Updated to last Friday. And then the last memo is Mr. Simcoe with the various levies and the recommendation. So together, those memos we updated as of last Friday. But we thought you guys might want to take a look at it. Maybe there's something we missed. If you could get back to us by Friday, then those would be a part of the minutes for tonight's meeting, so that we could put it on the website and everyone in the community would have the same information.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next up is the fiscal officer, and that's you, Mr. Simcoe.
Well, we have our month-end analysis for June, and we're working on getting there. Oh, there it is. Well, I think that the thing that's important is that we're at the 6-month mark, and you can see what our expenditures would normally be 50% if you look at that. And so now if you look at our expenditures for 2014, all of them are below what you would expect them to be. And so that is good. You can scan them down in 14 and compare them to 13, but they're awfully close. And so I think that's really a good sign for us. All of the departments are controlling their budgets well. I mean, they're below the 50% mark, which is a good thing. On the revenue side, our revenues are just about where we really expect them to be. That kind of, there's two things that kind of stick out at you a little bit. The general fund is down just a little bit, but again, keep in mind that we had last year a large estate that came in, and so that bumped up those numbers. And so the 69% is probably a little more realistic. It's not that they're falling short. And then the road and bridge, you note that one too. That is an up and down sort of fund there, and weather impacts us, what we're doing, and so that revenue will I think come back a little bit. And then the police fund's doing fine, and the fire fund is actually up just slightly, and they're holding their expenses well. So I think our numbers look good again at the 6-month mark. They're where we kind of expect them to be. So things are continue to be well. At 6 months, 7 months. I don't know. And then that's really all I have, unless you have a question. And then I have a resolution 14-073 on transfer of some appropriations. And here it is, yes. It is transfer appropriations, and due to heavier than usual equipment repair schedule,
And because we had to use some money for leaf pickup this spring, as well as additional curb repair and crack seal because of harsh winter, we need to move some money around. And that's really essentially what this is about here. And you'll see the attachment of the numbers. Oh, yeah. Look sideways. All right, there it is. And so these aren't like unusual transfers here that we're really doing because, again, equipment repairs. So you can see in the resolution why we're doing this. So if I can,
I'll offer Resolution 14-073, transfer of appropriations.
Second?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genoway?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Nobody signed up for a hearing from the public for non-agenda items.
I would like to offer a motion to adjourn at 7:32.
Second. Call it roll, Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genoway?
Yes.
All right. We adjourn.
All right. Thanks.
Good job on that.
Thanks.
You worked a lot.